Welcome to the Infinite Imaginarium, a co-creative enterprise where we can expand and intensify our light by expanding hearts, and we can do this by choosing everything that generates joyous emotions within us. Step out from what has always been familiar, reach to a higher plane of existence. This is your ascension. Do not hesitate. Do not doubt yourself. Whether or not you believe it, you are creating your own reality. You can do this as quickly or as slowly as you desire. So look not to what is happening outside of yourself. Instead, focus on what is happening inside of you. Transmutation begins at the level of consciousness, then progresses into your physical body, your cells, your DNA, and then your external reality. Welcome to the Infinite Imaginarium. We've got Missy and Satori D with us this evening. We're really sort of looking at discussing sort of strategies and tools and things that we've been looking at that we can progress our projects with, our Infinite Imaginary projects, which are, we have a few kind of things in the pipeline at the moment. So, Satori, would you sort of like to start with that?
Well, yeah, I think what's happening in Slack is really cool, and it's kind of something that we were talking about earlier, me and you, Nikki, before we started recording this. The best teacher is experience, and in computer terms they call it troubleshooting, so you learn by making mistakes. As we have more interactions in the Slack, more and more of this clarity of how to use these different tools that we have come into picture. Actually, I think we're all aware of that one conversation that I had with Dream Eater. It was actually really good because I think, in one sense, I was hopefully as clear and simple and easy to explain what Imaginarium is. And it's good to get these questions, right? He asked, so what is a Imaginarium? Is it just a podcast? That whole thing is like, oh, here's our elevator pitch, but it's really kind of hard to say what Imaginarium is. And then you say, oh, Imaginarium is a virtual creative workspace. And then, okay, what exactly does that mean, right? For right now, what the virtual creative workspace means is that we have these collaborative apps and tools to use to work on projects. And so we have Slack, which is a group creative brainstorming session. That's how we use it. And Slack is just basically a group chat. And we're using it, hopefully, as we use it more, we get better with how we organize our creative workflow. So, we've always been kind of chatting with each other. And it's just a matter of digging through our conversations and picking out the gems or seeds. I kind of really like explaining this, using this analogy to explain what I mean by that. For most people, it might seem kind of strange, but I think the type of people that we at least initially want to attract, I think they'll get it. And if they don't kind of get it, then it's not that Imaginarium is not for them, but maybe at this stage, Imaginarium is right there for them. And I use the seeds of ideas, right? So we're talking, and this happens all the time, right? All the time on the show, all the time in group chat. We just talk, and eventually someone says something, and it sparks something in me, it sparks something in Missy, it sparks something in you, and we go wild with the idea. Like just the other day when we were talking about in the John show afterwards, Missy said something, better fluff than snuff. And I just started kind of laughing, and it made my head kind of, I was like, oh man, that's like a great tagline. And I've been on this
better
kick.
Fluff film than snuff film.
Yeah.
That's what it was. Versus snuff film.
And I was just like, oh, I've been having this kick in my head. I don't know if you guys ever seen Requiem for a Dream. And in Requiem for the Dream, they have this trippy scene where the mom is all kind of amphetamine out with her little diet pills, and she's watching this infomercial, And so like she's tripping out, and the whole thing is like be excited, be excited. And she's just like tripping out and she's watching this infomercial. I always have that like in the back of my head is like it'll be funny to do like little infomercials for Imaginarium. And so I was like, oh, that could be a great tagline for Infinite Imaginarium. Better. Oh no, actually it was for Luminous Dark because it's a little bit more on the dark humor side. So better fluff than snuff. The Imaginarium infomercial was Infinite Imaginarium catching lightning in a bottle, and I just have like this image of like Missy in the background trying to catch lightning in a mason jar, and like jumping on the floor, like trying to grab it. But
that's a really good idea, but the lightning in a bottle thing for me might conjure up a slightly more unsavoury image, because years ago when I was living in Glastonbury, which is my hometown, there was like a spa shop, like a bit like a 7-Eleven type shop, and we all used to get really, really wasted, and then we'd have the munchies, and we'd go to this shop because it was the only shop in the high street that was open really late. So we'd go there and we'd buy this really rank cider, which was called White Lightning, and it was the most disgusting thing ever, but it was the cheapest alcohol that we could buy at the time, and we wanted to get a bit more, off our heads, so we'd go and buy this White Lightning. So that immediately conjures up that image to me. White lightning in a bottle, like people drinking this hideous cider. But it's still a good thing to say. But I just thought I'd share that because it's funny.
That could be your alternative version of catching lightning in a bottle. It's just us drinking that and just like passed out in our own puke. That'd be kind of funny. But anyways, so undoubtedly we always come to something like that. Like whatever it is, that was just one example. Even you sharing that tale is kind of funny. Generally speaking, those just go away, right? Those are just like fleeting thoughts.
Ask a question about Slack, because I quite like it, but there's a question I have about it in terms of threads that are created, because I have this thing that you can have these seemingly really unimportant conversations that can be random, and it just seems like it's not totally disconnected and there's nothing going on. But I kind of feel that at some point we have to archive all these threads and conversations and comments, because somewhere there's going to be some connective spark that comes from those conversations. So is there a way that we can, I wanted to...
Isn't that how the hashtag organizes the structure? Isn't it that way, Satori?
That's a good thing to talk about, because that's actually something I've kind of said, but on thinking about it more. So anyways, there's a lot to it, and this is something that probably we have to make a decision about. But just today in the Lumio, under our budget thread, I so Slack itself archives all our messages, but on the basic program, once again, the information and the whole plan is in our Lumio under the budget. So it gives you the plans and what you get and what our limitations are. So it's 10,000 messages that we could retrieve, but Slack archives the messages themselves, but you can't retrieve them unless you get the next package up. Now you have access to that. And I think our storage capacity is 5 gigs. The next level up is 20 gigs. And then the other one, the top tier of the package is unlimited.
I saw that. I'm glad it's working with Lumio. I'm glad it's an option.
And that's another thing that's kind of interesting and cool, and it's kind of why I wanted to test out Slack, because once we get to, actually, if we right now get the paid version of Lumio, which we could get a discount, like I actually have an email that they sent me, but we could go for like nonprofit kind of status to say, this is what we're using it for. We're barely starting out. And because they kind of were asking us, they're like, oh, you guys use Lumio a lot. And they said, we offer, we're not sure if you're aware, but we offer different packages to help your organization, and we want to know a little bit more about it and see if you qualify for like a nonprofit educational thing, or like different tiers. We're not quite like a corporation, and I don't think Imaginarium Foundation should ever be a corporation. I think this is just to help and fund, host different projects, different seeds to grow. Now those seeds can be different things. They could be corporations, they could be nonprofits, they could be individual independent projects, like whatever it is you want. It could be a multitude of things, but Imaginarium Foundation itself is always to serve, to keep the ecology of ideas. And this is where good ideas have a chance to grow. And I basically see it as like the foundation for the arts. We're supposed to have this funding for the foundation of the arts. And I see Infinite Imaginarium kind of being this foundation for the arts in Minds as we grow and we expand with the Minds community. But even more so than that, I think it's just a new, interesting model that we can test out for having, basically, to not have an exploitative system to help artists and people that want to do stuff creatively. We all, in one way or another, have talked about this, but about how damaging the whole Hollywood entertainment industry can be. Someone could go into a very talented and with true intentions to do art and express themselves, and then come out the other way totally different. And it's basically because I think their prime objective is not to propagate good ideas or to propagate art or even to do good media. What it is to exploit and to make money. So that's the underlying bias of them. And so that creates all of this kind of thing. In one of the videos I did, I said that I want art and media not just for corporations, not just for entertainment and monetization, but for inspiration, transformation, and manifestation. This, in a sense, the Infinite Imaginarium Foundation, which is in our tree kind of analogy, is the soil. And what it basically is, it could be looked at as a foundation for the arts and to help different people, whoever kind of has that initial curiosity, that initial passion or wonder to kind of do something. And so I think the basic thing is just to come in and have fun. And if there's a seed of an idea, then we have things in place to help it grow. So in Slack, we talk wildly, right? And if something good happens and say, oh, we should turn this into a project to do images for it, or a project to do filming or whatever it is, then we post it up on Lumio and we have a more clear and direct conversation. Like, this is what we're going to need for it. Can we do this and this and that? And then we vote on it and say, yeah, we could do that, or we could do this, or whatever.
Can I add to that? Because I was talking about that recently with Cartman about the whole point of when you put an initial proposal together. Right now, if it's put through the Slack chat, it's not monitored the way that, say, someone who works off like I am, for example, with something.
I can't hear you that good. You're breaking up. I can't make out anything you're saying. But I think I get what you're trying to say. It's my feeling that the Slack is only for a creative brainstorming session, and Lumio is for proposals. So it's kind of like we use Lumio to, once we have a kind of basic idea of something, then we go into Lumio to better organize it.
Can you hear me better now?
We get to the
we can hear
execution stage of the project.
Okay. This is what
we do it in Lumio, but we can kind of have the discussion, the random chat.
See, that's what I was
trying in Slack. and then we get to Lumio when we get to that point where we say, right, okay, we've got an idea. One of us individually has an idea that we want to execute. We want to say, right, so that we then make a proposal in Lumio.
It's great for starting new threads and throwing out information, but it's not great for tracking it or for having a checklist of who's contributing and getting it done quickly. That's you see how much chat it brings up, a lot of chat. So yeah, Lumio, and if you can integrate the two would be great, but there are apps that do this where you can do all of it at once. And what I'm trying to say about putting forth proposals should be tracked more specifically so that the collaborators that are involved, whatever they're already working on, it can be tracked, and you can collaborate, but whatever you upload, contribute, whatever you've worked on so far is all transparent for people. Do you see what I'm saying? So there's ways where even if we can integrate Lumio and Slack, right now I think that's what we can do for now and see how it works for us. But there's ways to, like, for example, I said I wasn't going to put a proposal through Slack and talk about it because there's no point in doing that. If I want to work out some of the rough draft or the sketch of it, I would wait. I wouldn't run it through Slack because it's already stuff that I would want streamlined to put.
Yeah, I've tried to always communicate this, but Slack is in place for Google Chat. As simply as my view of it should be. So it's just, we used to chat, kind of nonstop in Google Chat. Slack is taking the place of that. And once we get a clear idea for the project, it gets proposed in Lumio and saying...
What I'm saying is some people and some projects are not going to be put forth through the chat. And you know that because some of them are going to be, for example, like the Imaginarium, for example, I'm not going to open that up and chat. It's going to be something that's probably going to be sketched out and, put together more, and it's going to be worked completely differently. It's not a topic that's like open yet. But what I'm saying is there's still ways, Satori, to track the initial concept and regardless of what state it's in, still have some available for chat and still have some logs that are not necessarily open for chat, but are still logged as proposals. And that's what I mean about there's some that are not going to be in Slack. Do you see what I'm saying? They're just, that would be one. Yeah. The Imaginarium would be one. And you see what I'm saying? Like that would just be something that would go directly to Lumio.
If we were thinking in terms of like getting more advanced versions of stuff.
To me, I don't, that seems obvious to me, and I don't even see that as an issue.
No. I don't mean that it's not obvious to you. I'm simply saying that there are apps that would let you do both. So
and what I also said
easier for everyone to understand it.
I don't know if you saw it or not, but I'll restate it right now. The time is now. If you know of an app that's better, to propose it now for us to do it. The time is now to do it.
Have you tried Basecamp yet? Have we tried that? I haven't tried that.
No, I haven't.
I heard Basecamp can do a lot of the stuff that all of these apps are doing, and I think it would make it replace them. Because look, I'm not saying that it's not obvious to some people, Satori, it is. It's obvious to me about the Imaginarium that I wouldn't put that as an open discussion yet for collaboration yet. But there should still be a way for us to input all of the proposals we have without activating them live yet. You see what I'm saying? Where we can still track them and work on them. It's more cohesive, and that way ability to activate them, it's a click away, and we've already been compiling all the info without having to keep it off of the database that we're making, in other words. You see what I'm saying? So it's all transparent, but it's not necessarily active or live until we're ready to work on it. You see what I'm saying?
What seems logical to me is that we would have like some kind of an app that combines.
But also too, what I want to emphasize,
going to pay like a fee or something as well.
What I want to emphasize too is that all of this, and this is, I'm all right with this kind of do-it-yourself MacGyver of using apps. Is just for us to get an idea of how to do it, because it's with our intention to open up a Infinite Imaginarium subdomain, and that possibly going to be able to work by the end of the year or the beginning of next year.
When you talk about using Lumio and Slack, I think the one I just mentioned is $99 for unlimited users per month, for example. So it might eliminate 2 apps as opposed to, you know what I'm saying? Like, I've heard that it works more integrated, it works well, and we might want to try out even a trial or something before we
That's what
go
I
forward
was
with
trying to say, that if there was some miracle that we could come across some app that we could somehow combine.
By the way, Derek has tried a lot of them before.
And Slack combined. If we're going to end up paying a fee, splitting a fee 3 ways, the logic would be that we would find some app that offers the Lumio benefits and the Slack benefits all combined into one. And also, new people that come on board is kind of less confusing for the newbies. It's just one place that we go to, and we can explain what goes on there, sort of thing. I don't know if that's possible, and I haven't done any research.
But also to make it clear that Lumio and Slack can be integrated.
I love Lumio.
To go back to what Missy was saying, it's my idea. This is why I'm pushing Gitbook. Gitbook is somewhere to work ideas that are not necessarily ready for Slack, or it's like a resource. That's actually what I first started it when I did Asana, and I was trying to push Nikki to use it. I think this is a place, because what was happening in Asana is we're just throwing out links and this massive pile.
I hated Asana
of resources, and really Asana wasn't meant for that. Asana was just to assign tasks and to get them done. It wasn't meant to be a resource or even a chat app. It was just basically to kind of have like a checklist, and you do this. So it was getting really, in my opinion, getting confusing. Even before I even started using any of these apps, me and the Minds Panel Show started using Gitbook because we could all share it, and it's kind of a repository for information. So GitHub is a repository for coding. Gitbook is a repository for information. And I think, we could tear it out. And this is something too that I guess kind of to go back to about the issue with Slack. Honestly, I think we don't pay for anything now. We could do a workaround where archiving Slack into a Gitbook. We open up a new Gitbook saying Infinite Imaginarium Slack, and we just manually archive it. It's really easy. I could do that with no problem.
Or we could try maybe a free trial of a program that might be able to do what Lumio and Slack are offering to integrate and maybe streamline the process. Because again, it's about creating less work for us to do later by tracking it now.
Yeah, but my also thing is that I want this thing to grow organically and to be self-sustaining. So it's kind of my view that once we start just like, okay, right now, we don't necessarily need any of this stuff. If we just keep on, quote unquote, what I think would always should be our main function is producing so much content that they can't ignore us. And that means it's images. We could work independently doing our own thing and team up when we come on to the podcast. We should be always sharing stuff in our group. Like, for instance, Pirate Radio and this Interverse podcast post more than we do in our own group. Ideally, we should be posting more in our own group than them, just as an example. But once that grows, we get in funds, right? Because we're growing our audience. We're kind of pushing Open Collective. Now we have a little bit of funds, because ultimately it's my belief, or my idea, my own personal thing. If we're going to pay for something, I'd rather we pay for something that, in a sense, we're not renting, that we own. And so by that I mean we're paying for our subdomain, and that we're customizing it for ourselves. And basically, Infinite Imaginarium subdomain is our fully functioning creative workspace, and it's ours. We're not renting it. We own Infinite Imaginarium subdomain. And if we need to, especially if it grows the way I think it could grow, we design our own app that is based off of that. So if we could, because for one thing, I think, and this goes into my own personal kind of punk rock attitude, is you kind of just do it yourself, and you kind of learn a lot by not having the best tools. Your skills really kind of go up, and later, kind of MacGyver stuff, and learn by all these trial and errors. I'm not saying that we don't try Basecamp. We could try it, but I'm really hesitant to say, oh, let's pay for that, when in maybe 5 months we could use those funds to own something that is Infinite Imaginarium. It's
and
not
develop our own.
develop our own.
I'm not sure why it would be one or the other. Maybe I just don't know enough about Basecamp, but I'm not sure why you're suggesting that.
What do you mean? I'm not understanding.
What would Basecamp have to do with the subdomain and the money towards owning something? That's what I'm not understanding. Because it sounds like you were talking about getting Slack, the Pro, upgrading it and working with Lumio, and I'm saying to avoid that, if we're going to be spending anything and doing a trial, which we should probably do just for fun.
I'm saying,
but I wasn't suggesting to spend more money. I'm suggesting to not spend money on Slack Pro.
I guess if we use all these different apps, we can learn from them in a way. I'm not suggesting we plagiarize, every aspect of each individual app, but we can learn different things, and then eventually we can, if we can focus on the open collective as well, eventually we can raise the funds to create our own app.
That's one way to do it, when you say to create it based on the Imaginarium, the way that we've set it up, and I understand that, but I'm thinking about it totally from the user's perspective of, if someone wants to collaborate, they can open the app, they can put forth a proposal, and it will be tracked in the same way we're tracking our own, and it will be just as transparent, and it will be just as easy for them to interact. This app could be easier than you think without the info we need to populate it. All you need to know is what you want the app to do. There's people that actually make apps like this based on your company's needs. So what I'm saying is, that app could come early, and it could be useful for also in bridging the whole of the submitting proposals, the checklist for each item, who's available or nearby to fit, please check here. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's very similar to, have you ever gotten a party RSVP and it says, can you bring cups, or can you bring drinks, snacks? And you just click the box, and then it's very like automated. So there's ways to set up apps that have these features in the early without us needing to populate them, and it can help with new users and be really simple. It can be designed to really be almost like a slideshow, so it doesn't even have too many options for people to interact, and really only do specific things like track a proposal or submit one, find local users nearby to work with or collaborate with, for example, or to see what we're doing right now. You know what I mean? Like, just really basic for the beginning, and then upgrade it as we go.
Yeah.
See it more as a tool in the beginning for people to collaborate. Remember when I was saying about finding people near you? Imagine how many Minds users, and this is what I've noticed on Instagram and as a photographer, how many people I run into on there where I go, oh my God, you have an account, add me, because they're so hard to find these people, especially on Minds necessarily, where we have like the same interests other than going to a group. But once you've added everyone, let's say in the photography group, you run out of people, but there's plenty of other people that just may not have been in that group. So then you find them and you go, oh, you're a user on Minds. That's great. Add me. On Instagram, I'll be so happy. I'll be like, oh, you already have an account. That's even easier. Find me in the Imaginarium. So, but there's ways for these apps to become tools for the new members and for us, and to bridge that gap. That's the whole point of possibly creating one based on what our needs are. And again, Derek worked pretty specifically with the CRMs that needed to be created for databases they were working with. And he did a lot of trial error of the companies. And I would just suggest we try something that might document what we're doing and give us the ability to open chat without having to go between so many apps. But again, it's not really about like not doing it on our own. Like you're saying, it is a matter of doing it kind of gung-ho, but at the same time, having a copy and paste or go backwards with the work we've already put forth. Like, it would be great to document it moving forward,
Well, this goes for everybody who's a creative on the board of creators, us three. If you have an idea, do it. And like, if you want to test out Basecamp, go into it, set it up if there's a trial, and tell us, and we'll play with it. We'll see how it is.
I'm on it.
Just, for any of us, if we think there's something better, we should just do it. Like I said, also too, this is just my own kind of, eventually, yes, we want a very user-friendly application. We want Infinite Imaginarium to be user-friendly. But it's my opinion for right now, in the stage that we are, it's kind of a different conversation I had about the early days of Minds. Me and Gut Spiders will always have this conversation. And only a certain type of person that actually really has kind of explorer personality. There's a certain type of person that is kind of like really curious and a little bit fearless, that goes and tries psychedelics. Your average kind of person, that is not that appealing to them. It breeds this certain type of person, like Minds in the beginning, it breeded this certain type of person who went to Minds because it wasn't user friendly. You had to work at it. You had to troubleshoot to use it. You had to find your own ways to hack it. You had to find your own ways to work around certain things. And that bred this kind of hacker / creator personality type that in the early days of Minds populated Minds a lot. And that we all kind of had this thing. And I think just in this early embryo stage of Infinite Imaginarium, I don't want it to be easy, because the people that are not really, if this path is the path with heart for them, then those little annoyances won't deflect them from it. Like I want other, like, just like what you did. You're the prime example of the person, at least at this stage, that I want. When they see a problem or an issue, their reaction is not like, oh, I'm not going to use this. Their reaction is, oh, maybe we should use this. Maybe we should do this. Like, oh, I'm going to find this and just bring it to us and say, hey, we should do it this way. We should do it that way. And that's initially,
I hear you, that rebel spirit. I think that I agree with what you're saying, and I think there's still a way for us to find.
We're not at the stage yet to have, like, just anybody come here and use it. I think eventually that's the goal.
No, not at all. And it's about making certain features not active and still having the ability to, say, create this database around our business model. The app itself could be the tool that we use. We could make it go live later and have features later that are more integrated completely. But as far as what I mean is that I think there's an app that can bridge this gap to do both, is what I'm saying. That will eventually be the model for the way that we submit, even like proposals, information is submitted to new users, welcoming, all of it. And it could be streamlined through an app, whether or not we can add the features as we go, however we
I totally agree, and I'm totally on board. But I just want to emphasize this point. once again, anybody here doesn't necessarily need any of our approval to go about doing anything.
It's for tracking and submitting them properly the first time so that it's all integrated into the way the business model goes. So the way that it should be done is it like, let's say it's transparent, and we have other projects we're working on with checklists where people are like, oh, I have this, I want to contribute. So what I'm saying is there's a way to do that now so that the work that we're doing isn't just in chat, and that it'll be documented, but it doesn't have to be through the app and go live. Yeah. But you can still have one building your kind of like how you would want it to populate, let's say, later.
Yeah, I totally
know what I mean?
Understand that. And in one sense, I'm doing that manually with the Gitbook. But
I'm going to have to, I think the main issue was I was having issues from my phone with that, because I think that's more desktop, and I'm going to try to get into that now on just so Carmen knows, I'm going to be logging in. It's basically the main supercomputer I call Synergy, and it's going to be, I'm just going to use it for the Infinite Imaginarium login and keep that logged in on that computer and not switch between. So that'll be easier to manage things like that with Gitbooks and things, with the actual media.
And see, that's another thing. So there's tiers to Imaginarium. There's like community tier, which is just someone that's kind of like a fan that is maybe kind of like likes to chat with us, the community. There's contributors, which is more like, the people that want to do some artwork for us or songs, or maybe is interested in being a guest and taking more of a active role. Then I think too, the next tier is when they have their own project. It spreads off to their own pod, right? Where they're the director of their project, and maybe they have a board of directors. And then there's the board of creators, which is us, and we're just kind of make sure we tend the garden, that everything's kind of moving. We can help. If the help means we stay out of the way, we stay out of the way. We give them information to say, hey, this is a possible strategy to do that. We have this in place and that in place. Feel free to use it. You need access to it. Go ahead, have that. But also too, I think what's really important, I guess, in my own personal thing, and this is just me, and I'm always going to voice my own personal philosophy and stuff, and it's not to say that this is the right way, but this is how I view things. And it's, for me, it's really important to stay with this open source philosophy and to work with people that they're not making apps as just a strictly business model. There is an emphasis on kind of building the new story of humanity, which is kind of the first idea that encapsulates Infinite Imaginarium. For me, what got me excited about Infinite Imaginarium, even before I was even necessarily a creator of Infinite Imaginarium, was that Dale was talking about social contracts and blockchain, and I had my own show about it, and I dug into what was going on there. And what I saw was that there's all these great ideas of this future decentralization of open source and open ledgers and being transparent, that they're baked into how these things are designed. And that is, in my opinion, looking into the future where things need to go. And I've said this early on in the Infinite Imaginarium, when I had my first conversation with Douglas Rushkoff, and I was doing work with Scenario, and he said, more than building this app, what's important is the onboarding process. And the onboarding process means is that we have to, certain symbols and certain terms trigger certain behaviors and even attract certain behaviors. So if you use something, like this is what he told us, if you're using coin, then people are automatically going to try, or even the personality types of gaming the system are going to try to populate that. And how do we kind of rig this game so we get more points, more money, and this whole kind of mentality. And in my perspective, and this is something we talked about, especially early on of Infinite Imaginarium, is that we don't necessarily want that. Like, why, if we're having all these great tools and all this great stuff, we can't bring in the same mindset that got us in this mess that we're in. So it's for me to, if we're gonna support an application with funding it, I'm gonna strongly voice my opinion that we make sure that they're in line with this new story of humanity. Now, that's not to say that we can't use stuff that is not strictly open source or decentralized. Like, for instance, we're using Google Hangouts right now just because it's more user friendly. And I tried other options and they're not that easy. So when it's practical for this, like, the practicality is going to outweigh the philosophical. But we always should strive for that ideal. And, nothing's perfect, but at least I want to be part of that progression into the new story of humanity. So it's important that, if possible, the applications that we use, even if it's free, are in line with this kind of open source philosophy, and they're in line with this kind of what I'll frame as new story for humanity. And like, I seriously don't want to use Google at all, or even like YouTube at all. But right now it's not practical. Like, if Minds ever gets to that point where we make that kind of stuff obsolete, which I think there's a possibility of that, then I say that's the time where we ditch all of this.
Kind of the key to, like, the whole collaborative efforts which creates the new story for humanity that you were mentioning, Satori, brings me on to this thought that as people come on board with the Infinite Imaginarium in the future, and obviously it's kind of an artist creative platform, so people will come on with their own individual ideas of how they want to use it. My first thought is, how do we identify, without too much conversation and too much confusion, where they want to go with their idea, or what they want to do, or almost like a funneling process of, like, it could end up that people are funneled into different areas, which could then pose a bit of an issue of things being disconnected, which is kind of what we don't want. What I'm saying is, people come on, they have different ideas of what they want to create. So some people might want to use the platform in one way, in quite a lonerish type of way. Other people might come on in a group with a group idea straight off the mark, and they want to do something. And then does that then mean that we have to have these different areas where these different people funnel off into different sections? A bit like, it's not quite what I'm thinking, but you have the groups on Facebook, you have groups on Minds, and people end up going off into their different groups, and then things become somewhat disconnected, which is kind of defeats the object of what we're trying to do here, because we're trying to be collaborative and connective with what we're doing. And like you say, a lot of these things like Open Collective, it's not just about the services they offer, it's about, there's a deeper meaning to it. It's about connecting human beings and stopping us from being so disconnected and being in our groups like we've had for hundreds of years, of being in our group of different religions or different class systems because of our monetary amounts of wealth we have in our bank accounts or whatever. So that's kind of the weird dilemma that I find myself in, thinking, how's that going to work?
What attracted me so much to Open Collective was not that this platform is still in beta, but when I heard Pia talk about it, that I got a message directly from her when I just inquired about it. And this is kind of similar to the experience that I had with Minds. John reached out to me. Here it is, the creator of this thing, and they're making it personal, right? Like a personal touch. It's not some automated response, and they're asking you. So I take them up on that offer, and then I find out, they really are interested in helping. They're walking the walk and not just talking the talk. Also, too, what I see from them is that they're not just about pooling monetary resources, but pooling resources of getting people, of the resources of their talents, skills, of what they do. They have plans to have like this super like open collective is a super collective with little collectives in it, right? And that they, if you want to be part of that collective, the super collective, you pay a little bit of money, but whatever, and then they have this like kind of events and conventions, so that Infinite Imaginarium is in like a physical event, conference event kind of meetup type of thing, and we're talking to programmers, we're talking to the meetup community, like the hacking consciousness or consciousness hacking meetup group that's on there. And so that's their big picture about it. It's not just opening the finances, is to help communities grow healthier, that everything's kind of out in the open and everybody's on the same page, and that these things are transparent and people know what kind of energy and focus it takes to do certain things, and if they really resonate with that, then they can see where their money is actually going. And not only that like people on the outside could kind of put work into it, and if it's reasonable, they could get funds for it. But it's more than that. It's to have this community. Like just recently on their Slack channel, one of the main guys, who's like the engineer, posted this article about how people live longer and have happier lives when they're part of a healthy community. For me, that's very telling where their mindset is at. Not just Pia, but the people that are working with her. That their mindset is very similar. My mindset. We have different styles and different ways of going about doing it. There's a certain common thread where I think most of us right now, I don't even know how to phrase it, but for lack of a better word, bubbling around the surface of mainstream culture, kind of intuitively know that we all have at certain levels this dis-ease with how the mainstream culture is. Where up until this point, it seems like, I know for myself, for my own, I only talk about myself, prior to trying even to do anything like this, or even proposing something similar to working collaboratively, I did a lot of my own kind of work in it. And I would label myself like a Dharma bun, like I would be just doing my own thing. I struggled a lot with that in a sense. And especially, let's say younger, when I say my punk rock days, my attitude was like, fuck society, fuck everybody, fuck anything, this and that. And I missed a lot of different things in that natural rebellious stage of my life. Then my next stage was like, it wasn't like I was angry or like fuck everything. It was more like, oh, I'm just going to check out. All of this is stupid. I'm just going to ignore it and do my own thing. Kind of be my own little Dharma bum hermit, kind of going up in the clouds, whereabouts unknown, and just like, oh, I can't deal with this. I'm going away from it. And I don't know, something in me, there was still a dis-ease with that. And when I got a little inkling of a possibility of this power that I felt on the early days of Minds, I really started to see, and I'm of the Buckminster Fuller, it's about the only way change or evolution happens is not by revolt or revolution, but is by building a better model that makes the old model obsolete. And so as I get more of that philosophy, it's very imperative for me personally, and then hopefully too, I could insert some of that into the DNA of Infinite Imaginarium, is that we're always trying to use those newer models. And even if it's not easy, especially if it's not easy, I think a lot of times I've seen a lot of good apps and a lot of good people having attentions, but it's just that, and they're good, but people don't populate it for whatever reason. And
I totally hear what you're saying too. And I think what Nikki, to answer one of the things she was saying, like about all the different people that want to contribute, how will you know on what level necessarily? But there's still, again, reasons for an app where there would be no questioning it, because it would be specifically through, let's say, a process of elimination where by default it would be transparent. It would all be there. So again,
Yeah,
like, I still see like there's
it would be
reasons.
obvious. It would be, everything would be connected up to the point that everybody would know exactly what that app was about, or what we were about, or however you want to look at it. So they would go there, and perhaps you wouldn't have to even question what I was saying originally.
There's ways, again, to think of the app not necessarily as like a confusing interface that's going to generate like take away from the idea or make it too accessible. If anything, it should be one that is designed around our business model and streamlines our whole concept. And if anything, we are the template, right, for that, and could try to build it based on our needs even, and try from there and then activate them to go live as we fund them, you know, and work with that. But I think either way we're moving in the right direction, because it seems like, you know, we want to submit and track all the info. I know you love documenting the early processes, document all of that, but I think there's a difference between ideas being too free and flown around in a chat where they can be lost or not documented properly, and then you have confusion with people, or like, say, you have the option to instead have it be a simple checklist that's really easy for everyone to understand and follow. I think that's what Nikki too was asking about, the different, say we make different tiers, like you said. That's one thing we should write out right away. I think that's great. There's the community contributors that are just part of our community. I see people that post Imaginarium with the, you know, their pictures, but they're not really contributing to the Imaginarium shares. People that hashtag Imaginarium shares are obviously trying to contribute and work with us. And that's an example of the tiering process that we need to describe, I think, to people, so that when they approach us, they have more of an idea of where they might want to contribute or fit in. You know, give them a couple options on what we are offering, like as far as collaborators go. And, you know, with like Dream Eater, for example, the confusion there was I was specifically trying to invite him, but talk to him. And then when he finally got the app, the time difference was I was not available. And it created a big confusion. By the time I finally talked to him, though, he was understanding that he was tagged specifically in 2 threads that I already talked to him about contributing ideas on. And he was more understanding that we were trying out this app, and that he was not necessarily required to do anything, but totally encouraged to. And then he felt way, I think, more aware of what the whole thing was, because I think he thought we were trying to show him stuff we were doing. And I said, because he asked me, he said, for example, with the Time Twins comic, he said, how much of it did you write? And I said, oh no, I'm not the writer. I'm collaboratively showing what my ideas and visuals so far have been. And for example, I think it would be great to have certain characters, as we talk about, have like insert their own sort of RPG type of choose your own adventure. Maybe people write their own character's adventure, or 2 options for them, and other people pick from the 2 written options for these characters. And I just told them it's all inspired by stuff that I've been going through with the dual dimension dreaming, and talking about Nikki with the you know, having trouble being in certain dimensional atmospheres and shifting and ascending. And like, him and I have strange conversations too. And I thought, well, right away I wanted to get input on that comic, as well as specifically I wanted to just talk to him openly about the stuff he writes about, and his art, and his stuff that he writes about, like specifically on dreams. And so I started the Third Eye Ride, to get Satori and him talking psychedelics, and you and him talking about different dimensional stuff, and just to have that be open and before we go live and in chat. But as far as just inviting people, I think that's why I thought there should be a welcome room aside from the general room. Just that's where the screening process happens. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I'm thinking that, you know, coming to the end of our discussion tonight, you know, I feel that where we're all moving towards the same thing, in the sense that the way I see it is that we need to, at some stage, look at developing something that brings all these ideas and all these things together. So, you know, sort of the final thoughts our discussion tonight. Satori, what would you say in regards to that? How we can perhaps move towards creating something that could perhaps bring all these things about, so we can have a platform where people can come and collaborate, but they can also do their own individual projects as well, without too much disconnection. Because for me personally, that would be the perfect scenario. Whether it's possible to create something like that without funneling people into different areas and becoming disconnected. I don't know how easy that is to do, but what would your kind of final thoughts be on that?
I think that for now, in the stage that we are right now, is that we are the guinea pigs and test subjects. Not only are we kind of the moderators and servicing the community, but we're also troubleshooting our own stuff. So as we troubleshoot, and by trial and error, of what's the best way that us three communicate, and that's why I set up the Google Calendar. Maybe that will work. Ultimately, I would like, as Missy was saying, that the calendar and group chat and then the function for making decisions and all of this stuff is all in one thing. But I think for now, if we feel, because we're all different, but we all have this common thread. So for me, it's important to do this kind of raw archiving of stuff. So since that's important to me, then I just do it because I feel that needs to be done. And if Missy feels or knows of something that possibly can be better than what we're using, then she goes and just does it and finds it, and then kind of onboards us into that and says, hey, she takes lead on that, of finding possibly a better alternative to what we're already using, and she takes lead on that and tells us, hey, I looked up whatever app it is, let's test it out. Is everybody, let's jump in it and just see how it works and see what we think. And it's her responsibility to check in with us, and either in a group chat or directly saying, hey, what do you think about this? Is it cool? Whatever it is. And I think for the beginning, what I was saying is, I kind of have this feeling that in the beginning, we shouldn't be so concerned of onboarding a community. Like, we onboard contributors and creators and directors first. People that we are, they already are part of Imaginarium. Like, I like what Seek Gnostic has already done. I like what Dream Eater, and then my other friend, his name's Leo maybe. They kind of just naturally explore and kind of just do it without necessarily having to be onboarded. And that's not to say, I think the cohorts is kind of like, just give them an overview, and if they ask, like, oh, what's this is, what that is, and of course, we kind of tell them, hey, if you have any questions, tag these 3 people, tag us. As they get more inquisitive, then we help them to each stage. If they're getting more serious, like, for example, Seek Gnostic told him, hey, just play with this. If you have any questions, let me know. And then he kind of, was looking around, and then we just started talking, and I was just kind of joking with him. And then he found the luminous Dark Tales room, and he's like, oh, I really like this. He's like, what is this about? And then I kind of explained it to him, and then we just got into a conversation. And then later I told him, hey, I'm going to add you to Lumio, because that's where eventually we start making more decisions. But already feel free to work on this idea independently on yourself. And if you have something, like I told him, maybe you develop your own character, or maybe, you write a little bit of this and that. And I think, recently he put in a thread, kind of a basic summary of what he thinks his character should kind of be. And he proposed, it was not necessarily proposed, but he just shared it with us.
Yeah, and I really like the idea of people writing their way into the story, maybe writing their characters' interactions. But I really like the idea too of writing an alternate, so that when people read this story, perhaps they have an option to choose their own adventure path. And it's kind of bringing back that interactivity that they're trying to do now on Netflix. And I'm like, wow, this reminds me of being a kid and doing the choose your own adventure books, where they were mind blowing. You just couldn't wait to read it another way. You know what I mean? And that can be created along the way. As you're thinking about the overall process, and then you create 2 stories when you're done. It's like,
yeah. We remember when we had that kind of like little inkling of idea of having this interactive like coloring book. This thing could be an interactive story, or maybe it's just like the outline and we have some narrative of it, but you could add your own like character to the scene.
It could,
and then your own like
it
dialogue.
Could definitely be,
We just like frame it for them, and they could turn it into their own story.
That could be, an app in itself.
And then that turns into an app on its own. And then by this time, the Time Twins world is its own thing. It has branched off from Imaginarium, and whether it's you and Nikki are on the board of directors of that, you totally make the quote-unquote business decisions on that. You always will be part of the Infinite Imaginarium family, but you're your own entity yourself. You make your own decisions yourself. You have your own...
Overall, everything should be run through some kind of... it can't be all broken up like that forever between... We have to find a way to streamline it. It's going to drive me bonkers. It's going to drive me bonkers.
I think,
No, we can't have... It's a rainforest that we're building, not a farm. Things need to grow wild and crazy.
But I think that, the key to all of this is that we shouldn't have to ask permission. I want to go back to what you were saying, Satori, that we don't need to ask permission. If we have an idea or a plan for something, we can just do it. We can just create it or do it. Even if we're going to go off and create an app and then just present it and say, look, I've just created this. What do you think of it?
Unless there's a decision to keep things somewhat of a quality control aspect and streamlining the process to keep it consistent, it's going to get confusing. There's ways to do this in the early interim, which I'm going to look into, but...
I totally agree with...
Yeah, I think just using what we have so far as a template has helped us to get to where we're deciding what will work best, and I'm going to look into...
My thing, too, is that I'm totally on board with that. I totally agree with it, and I'm on the same page with that. But my only caveat to that, which I will always express, is that it's not only, and this kind of goes into my thing that I always kind of say, is that for me, the kind of like streamlining it and making it more organizing, and that's what I want to emphasize is what I'm saying doesn't conflict with what you're saying. But what I want to add to that is that we make sure that we never lose that something deep. That the front end side of making it user friendly and all this kind of stuff, we don't lose the heart of it and making it something deep. For me, that is people that are in line with the news story, that are progressing to this more open source, collaborative type of stuff, that we should always strive for both. But, of course, we have to make our decisions in what the world is right now, but also to go in always for the evolution of it.
I think that I agree fully, and it's to protect that very heart and passion. It's transparent, and there's a way we can all open it up and keep going. And I think there's ways where we can create that interface. I really do.
As we focus in on what we have already, right? We have the Minds channel, and we have our podcast. And if we put our focus in on that, we're gonna see how it grows. And as it grows, we're gonna see how best to tend the seedling into a sprout, into a little plant.
I would love a magic interface that just has the ability to have everything in one interface.
But we can't lose. Like, if we're so busy trying to find this magic interface and even developing a magic interface, but we don't have any content, if we're not creating.
Look, let's take our current project. Let's break it down like this. Let's take that as an example. There's 3 people. Seek Gnosis wants to write his character.
I'm not arguing against it. I'm arguing for it, but I'm also
No, hold on. I'm saying let's take one example of a project we're trying to collaborate on. Let's just take one example. What I'm saying is right now there's no tracking who's doing what yet, who's done what yet. And there's also, even though it's written down and stuff, there could be a way to, by the user, pull up their entire progress history, everything they've done and contributed. But it doesn't have to take away in any way from what we're doing. If anything, I think it will just make it, and I know you don't like the word streamlined, but it does help overall with organization. If we have
I get it.
The mind invaders is so, like, of course when I heard that I was like, of course that's the first thing the Time Twins would get into. And then I thought, okay, so I want to see what's written on that. So it would be great if you could just then click on that and see who's contributing.
I think sometimes we're in a danger of, we discuss things like on Slack, we can have these random discussions that go on and on and on. And sometimes key things might be missed where, that maybe we could work on how we polish something that is a gem, that comes out of these threads, that comes out of these discussions.
I think that's kind of what I mean. It's hard to track what the key elements. Yeah, because it's hard to track the key elements.
The key elements, and think, right, we can polish this and make this something epic and amazing. That would be a really positive way forward with the Infinite Imaginarium.
I think with the chat, that's the problem I was bringing up, was with chatting, it becomes chatting, but when you have, for example, a list of like elements or contributions or effort so far, then you can go in and edit it and keep going. It's really a matter of having the ability to openly talk as well as also having the ability to openly work.
Yeah. I mean,
and that's what I'm looking for.
Tonight's discussion.
I'm totally
what would you say, do you have any final thoughts? So I'll go to you, Satori, first. Do you have final thoughts on what we've discussed?
No.
You've said everything. I think we've said everything.
I've talked too much. I don't want to stop talking.
Do you have any final thoughts on what we've talked about tonight? Anything you want to add to the mix, Infinite Imaginarium mix of madness? Missy,
right?
Final thoughts on tonight's discussion. Great. I know that we've probably said everything that we could possibly say, but
I think it's great that we had this, because it works out that I feel like we're all on the same page. We just want to make sure that we cover everyone's interests, and we'll just look into using ourselves as the template and really taking like our first collaboration that we're trying to manifest, not before as the Imaginarium or what you guys have tried in the past, but let's take just one we're doing actively now and just try to see if with that we can figure out what works best, because I think we're pretty much on the same page with that.
To piggyback on this, and this is something I have said before, but maybe I need to be more clear and emphasize this point. I think what we need to work more collaboratively on is our podcast. And which is glad, because I had Nikki set up the room, and like, for instance, we should all, maybe the board meetings is like this rotating thing where the person kind of organizes it and does everything in that side of producing the show.
That sounds really good. We can rotate, and if you guys want, 4:20 on Saturday works well for me. If that, are you trying to do that time still?
Nikki said that this time might be the best time for her.
Which reminds me to ask you if you wanted to try to. Okay, so you spoke to Dream Eater Satori, right? He said it was, what was it, 9 o'clock our time? No, 9 o'clock his time. Did he say after 9 o'clock his time in Australia? Was that right?
I think he said 10 o'clock his time.
Yeah, like after 9 or 10 his time. And then I wanted to see if, like,
I was just thinking,
I
if
don't
we
know
were
if
doing
that's
like a rotation thing, depending on
right.
the nature of the show, like we've got the Board of Creators show, and then we've got kind of like, I call it everything under the sun, because it's kind of that type of thing. You know, maybe if certain people in the world, you know, there's like a 10 o'clock show, if we were doing a rotation of hosting, this is just an example, I'm not saying this is set in stone or we should do this, but say for example, Missy, you did, on your rotation, you did a 10 o'clock show, PM his time.
I think
I
you
was thinking
should
10
pick.
o'clock my
You
time.
should pick a couple time slots that are good for you, and then we can try to rotate them
Okay.
based on your
Because I'm
time
thinking there's
slot.
other people.
At least as a working strategy for this is the board of creators needs to have, it's not a board of creators if all three of us are not here. So
Yeah.
board of creators, as far as date and time, Nikki needs to take lead on that. So
Okay, 6 p.m. then.
yeah, you say 6 p.m.
Yeah, and we'll be
and
flexible.
up to you, up to you. Like if something happens or you know, like that day of or the day before that you're gonna need to switch the time, just switch it and let us know.
Yeah,
and we can do it.
Still be flexible.
So,
I'm not saying that.
So I think Board of Creators is a monthly meeting / show that we do, and this is why I wanted to set up that calendar. So every end of the month we have the Board of Creators. So every Saturday at 6, it's a standing 6 p.m. our time is a standing meeting that we have. Now for the community hangouts, I would love for all three of us to be there, but it is not necessary for all three of us to be there. Eventually, as we grow and we have more community, it could be just one of us being there, because there's really, I don't even want the community hangouts to even have necessarily a host. It's just inviting people in and just talking and hanging out.
Yeah, that's why
it's
I
like a
call
lounge.
it a core chat or chill chat, because if it's a core chat, I know it's us. If it's chill, then I know it's just not hosted and we're just hanging.
And so that should be kind of a little bit of a standard. You know, like we have those twice a month, maybe the same time, 6 p.m. And we don't change those because that's for people out in the community to know and to maybe try to make it to that.
Why don't we keep that one at 420? Let's keep that one at 420.
And that just requires one of us opening up the room to do that and recording it. And now, when we do shows, which are more produced, I think that's up to the guests that we have. So we accommodate for Dream Eater whenever's best for him. And whoever's taking lead on that, I'm taking lead on that. I talk to him and we set the time. Then it's my responsibility to let you guys know. But if you guys don't show up, kind of what I did with John, right?
Yeah.
I was like, hey, I'm having this show at this time because this is what John needed to do. I did it in 3 days. You guys are welcome to come, but if you can't come, I'm going to do it by myself.
I think it is important when you invite someone on to, like, not necessarily to make everyone or have them do it around everyone else's schedule, but to ask them when it's convenient for them and to try to have it be more organic. I think it's funner.
The shows that have guests, those are totally what's best available for that person and whoever's. And it actually should be all of our goal to get different people, whoever we talk about, and then work it around and then kind of just mention it.
Yeah, I fully agree. I'm glad that we can agree to have the, at least agree to the 420 show so I can remember, and then we'll agree to the core shows around us being flexible. I think we'll be able to pull it off more consistently.
You know what I was thinking too, even for the consistency, is that at the end of the month, we have the Board of Creators. So that's the last. I
agree. Yeah, I think that's
last Saturday of every month is Board of
the month.
The last Saturday of the month.
The last day of the month, like the first.
No, the last Saturday of every month is Board of Creators.
Yeah. Map all of those shows.
Yeah, we could just put those in on the calendar, and so we could do it for a whole year.
I'll do that. I can do that.
Do that as the last Saturday of every month, and then all the other Saturdays could be community hangouts at 420. Now, if they fall through and no one shows up, then we don't have it. And then as we organically go, we're looking for guests and topics and things that we build around, and then those are the produced shows that happen on the fly whenever they make sense. we have already kind of like a set schedule, but we're always looking for the more produced shows of with John or Bill or Dream Eater, whoever it is, and we start talking to them, because I think what will happen at the community hangouts, there's going to be something that resonates, whether it's genius or crazy, and we're like, hey, that's something we need to produce, and let's start working on that. And I think that's how it naturally flows out. So we have like a consistency. Perfect. Then we tried to have those organically shows that come out, because we're constantly having people try to come to the community hangouts, which is kind of like a free-for-all. But if there's somebody, like for instance, I want sex, was it death, rebirth, and sex, or sex, rebirth, and death? And
sex, death, and rebirth. She goes by Joan Pope, so she'll probably be, I said we would probably refer to her as her account name.
We talk to them, and then we do a more produced show with that. We're saying, you know, like if you want to talk about your music or have some of your music get streamed into the editing, and it's this kind of both mutual thing.
For example, I did talk to her more about that on Instagram, and she said she was really excited about it. So I said you work on a lot of different things and you do things, you collaborate already, and I said instead of focusing on that stuff, I'd like you to put together some links of visuals that you would like us to focus on or work with, and I want to know specifically if there's any direction you want the chat, not necessarily to have anything scripted, but the reason for that is because when you work with people that wear like a lot of different hats and go by different monikers and do different projects, you definitely want to respect the artist's sensibilities and aesthetics. And people like that, like you're saying, that are very active in putting together their own media and whatnot. My first thing off the top is letting them know that we want to represent not just like their specific individuality and promote that, you know, under the Imaginarium umbrella moniker, but also make sure they know who they are as a brand. If we're going to be interacting with people and collaborating with people, that's got to be a given, right? That we like where they're at with what they're doing. And so that's part of that process, is send me what you're working on or what you think you'd like us to use in that chat. And then, so this is what I'm waiting for her to do, though, is actually provide like a couple of those things that I asked for. So like I can invite her to the Slack and I'm sure she'll join, but just so you guys know that that's something that I asked right away, even on Instagram when I like an artist.
Yeah, definitely. That we don't know what exactly the time will be for that. So I think if we have the set in stone kind of open schedule, that we could take our time.
She's in the East Coast. You mean with her specifically, or with?
No, I'm just talking in general. The part of the idea is that we have content every week, like the hangouts and this. We're doubling up on the work. They're more kind of like meet and greet, and kind of like hanging out and having fun. But there's no reason why that can also be content that we use. But I say for the more produced shows, some might happen. Like with John, it took 3 days to do that, to get him on it and schedule it. But like for someone else, it might take a month to get that scheduled in. And like for Dream Eater, it's like next week. But
I'm sure I could have her scheduled soon.
Yeah. They're all over the place. Like for instance, I would eventually want to start working on trying to work my magic and get Douglas Rushkoff in. And that's something that's maybe a project that's going to take a couple of months to do, but I'm pretty sure I could do that. You know what I mean? So there's like different levels of the
the board of creators is going to be kind of an ordered element to it, because obviously, like you say, we're going to have that every Saturday at the end of the month, and we can map the whole thing if needs be on the Google Calendar or whatever we need to do. Which makes it easier as well, because we know exactly when
it helps. Yeah, it's so much easier. Yeah, because we need to focus on what I was saying before about manifesting the actual physical creation station. Would be the difference between that happening then later is really a lot of the projects we're talking about taking way more time. And the truth is, when you have, you know, like a conjoined effort of my toys, I'm putting them on the table. Here you go. Like, what toys do you have? And everyone puts their toys together. You said, and I realize you have a big old bag of goodies to play with. And it's kind of like that, where I feel like we could be combining a lot of effort and saving a lot of time in the end, and a pain in the end, really. So I'm going to be looking into that pretty much this week, now that I have Synergy back, and she's going to be set up to run the Infinite Imaginarium, and I'm not going to have it logged on as a personal account. So I'm going to really try to focus on having that page be a little bit more current.
I think to push more into our consciousness too, as a general strategy, as a board of creators, I think we need to, like, I think as a general strategy, if we just say, like, as a benchmark, we use the Infinite Imaginarium channel on Minds. Like, for instance, let's just say we do not 3 posts, but we either 3 posts. It could be a remind. It could be a remind of an old thing.
Or a blog.
Or a blog. It could be an image. It could be a video. Or just a thought.
To keep that going.
If we do that each, like, just as a general strategy, 3 times, at least 3 times a day. And now, if something happens and you don't do it, that's fine as well. But imagine Nikki does 1 in the morning.
Are you talking about from the Imaginarium? Well, be specific. Are you talking about reminding from your
the Minds Imaginarium channel?
Got it. Okay.
The Imaginarium channel. Now, it could be a remind of something that you posted. There's no stickler of, like, oh, it needs to be exactly this original content or whatever. Just to keep that page active and going. So imagine if Nikki in the morning just spends like 1 minute reminding something from the group. At lunch, you make a picture and you post that up. And then at night, maybe you do a quick little blog of something that happened in Slack. And you do that 3 times of your time, right? Spread out through the day.
Yeah.
Missy does that and I do that. Now we have 9 different posts that are scattered throughout a 24-hour period, so that we're kind of always in the Minds feed. And it's always active, and it's always around.
Here's the truth, guys. I don't want to use the word soliciting. It sounds terrible. I'm always inviting people that are interesting on Minds and showing them how to interact with us and find us.
It's just so we're all using the Imaginarium channel. Because there's going to be times that I'm busy and maybe I'm doing something else and I'm not going to be able to post, and that's fine. And there's times that where something happens or whatever.
This is my favorite, you guys. Get the new people you invite after they've tagged something they like. Say, whenever you tag it, let me know and I'll remind it, and then you introduce them. And it works really well, I think, that way, because then other people do the same. And then it's reminding not just the user, but the Imaginarium. You know what I mean? And
yeah. That's always been kind of my strategy.
But I totally agree with the Infinite Imaginarium channel. That's a really good plan.
Yeah, we can definitely
regularly.
Yeah, and with me having it logged in on the computer as the main account, it should also, make it really much more active.
I think I'm gonna ask Sofuego because he knew something. He proposed it a long time ago, but I don't remember what it was. But something to
a database.
A central hub, a repository for our content.
Oh, let me ask.
And
on what level? Like hacker level?
I mean, we could use Demon Saw. That's something.
See, because I don't know if even Derek would know that one. Because I was going to say on hacker level or what sound files. They use a lot of programs too because they take up a lot. They can take up a lot of room. But I will ask and we'll find a way, because either way we need to. And again, I'm going to go back to this. I know we need to have a way to virtually share our database, but I also think that for now, we should be centrally located and sharing our toys and working together. Yeah. Really.
I mean,
I really believe that 100%. So
I think I gave you access and shared you guys a Google drop drive that I did for Imaginarium. It's there.
Yes. Yes, I have. I actually, when I go to my drive, it gives me the option of seeing that. And the other thing was, because I can upload images to it, but unless they're labeled, and I'm probably gonna have to make a separate folder, I guess. We could do it that way by artist, I guess. Let's do it by username if we can, because it's good that they're for the Imaginarium, but if we're gonna have different users contribute, we should keep track of what file. We should just do it by their names. But again, just so Nikki knows, like my main thing is this actually manifesting into an actual physical creation station, so that my giant desktop computer and all of our sound equipment and microphones and speakers and my flat screen and all of this could be put to use and have the ability to not just start right away as a production entity, but have the ability to house temporarily any guest that comes, especially the core user. I mean, if it's us three, there's no way we can't write this into the proposal right off top and have it be designed into and around the model that we're looking at. And the only thing that's been preventing that is technically me being able to come and meet up with you, which again comes back around to, if we had a central meeting place, all of this stuff could be stuff we could have been working on already. Like
something ongoing.
Yeah.
Imaginarium with Dale a year ago, and then we did it again. We should have that all the time, so there should be kind of some, but I don't know if that's just...
June 6th is 24-hour Imaginarium.
Keep it like that, Dan.
Yeah. June 6th. Yeah, June 6th is the birth of Infinite Imaginarium. That's kind of like our holiday.
We should work towards...
And we should always work to have it, like, maybe next year, it's going to be an actual physical event instead of just a virtual event.
We might be able to
and every year to progress forward with that. To emphasize what Missy was saying is that it has always been, since the birth of Infinite Imaginarium, and even before it was even framed as Infinite Imaginarium, 24-hour Imaginarium was a physical event that Dale had in Australia. And to emphasize that even more, is that Imaginarium has always been an attempt to the actual physical space.
The physical location remains there to do what it was intended for in its original purpose. That's part of what's written into the whole design of this location, is to provide this space for the community we're curating or putting together, and then we kind of invite users that we interact with or that want to come have a stay and create with. They don't have to waste money on hotels or spend time in traffic or waste money on gas. So it's like things like that, when you have the ability to have someone come and visit and just create with you.
But I think ironically, in a small scale, that this whole crisis that Minds is kind of in, that it's ironically helping to start forming those habits of people organizing and kind of doing community organizing on Minds already. So they're kind of like troubleshooting that. Like, you know, the first troubleshoot of that, I mean, the early days was landmines, and then there was Minds Images with what Fritz has been doing, and then now the whole block the pedal thing or troll the pedal at whatever form it's taking, that's taking on an even more serious working out of that. It seems to be kind of setting what John was saying about the monetizing, but in this sense, Minds working more of doing kind of like change that they want to see, or be the change they want to see, that it's setting the plumbing for that there's already people already have experiences of working in a group, if not, because what groups were used before were just like to consume, it's kind of like a central resource, or to consume media, but it wasn't used as kind of organizing, oh, we're going to do this, let's do that. And I mean, I used to use Minds Panel Show for that, and I had another group that I try to use for that. But it takes a couple of, like, sometimes it doesn't work, it dies, but there's always this kind of learning from that. And I think this natural, like, overall progression, like even in nature, like certain plants die, but eventually one of them, even in the same family, kind of sticks and gets roots, that the old kind of leaves and plants that wither give back the nutrients that makes it possible for the next generation of whatever that evolution of that seed of an idea.
No one understood that when I made a comment in the bugs that all the bugs were fine for now because it enriched the soil, and no one got what I meant, and someone thought that I was making a comment. Understand what I meant. I was like, no, it's perfect that way. It's just perfect. I was like, I wrote something in the bugs and comments that said, I'm not even going to ask until all these other ones are answered. So don't even worry about it. And that it was funny because it was pertaining to the photo galleries.
And then you just hacked it. Yeah.
Well, I hacked it, and that's why I brought it up. But I was not gonna mention it. But I thought maybe I should just let them know that I found a way around it. Like I was like, Well, right on, guys. So yeah, I think that it's good we worked out that we should have like a regular monthly deal, and we'll have and you know, it's good that we're talking about some of these apps and whatnot, because especially the like Asana, I've never used that. I don't know what happened before with that one or whatever, but you know, I do know the downfalls of trying to perfect like an interface or having something just be.
Well, I think we're good. We went, what, 2 hours more?
It's not just if these apps are compatible or not, but some of them actually seem to have issues, like real issues, and not work. So I'm just going to try to mess with them as much as possible on the new phone and set it up and see.
Yeah.
But no, I think we did good, guys. I think we hit a marathon. She fell asleep.
Yeah, she's falling asleep. But you gotta have to like stop the broadcast. Nikki, you're in charge. Stop it!
Nikki, we're gonna explode.
I'm still here. I was listening to you guys.
Going directly into the sun. You need to stop.
But listen, I'll stop broadcast. I've just got enough finger power and consciousness left to hit the button of stop broadcast. So, guys, thank you very much for this evening.
Yeah.
And
Bye.
it's been a good chat. It's been an epic chat, but we did start late, so you know.